everyone. Welcome to today's Tuesday Times Roundtable. It is my pleasure to introduce one of our most recurring veteran Tuesday Times Roundtable moderators and one of the truest forms of faculty supporters and friends of the Global Learning Initiative, Dr. Alok Deoraj, who has spent more than 20 years of research, teaching, and management experience in both academia and in industry. Dr. Deoraj supervises graduate research and teaches numerous environmental and global public health courses at the undergraduate and graduate level. His overarching goal of his research is to measure the influence of the microbiome and complex environmental exposures, including on chronic diseases and cancer. His ongoing research focuses on the genes and environmental interactions of the endocrine disruption pathways at the genome and epigenome signaling in relation to precocious puberty, reproductive aging, reproductive impairment, and cancer. Very scientific. I've learned some of those words over the past few years being a part of Dr. Deoraj's TTRs right here. He has published over 50 articles in peer-reviewed journals, books, magazines, and conferences. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Alok Deoraj.
Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing? Good? All right. So my name, as he mentioned, is Alok Deoraj, and I am here in the Robert S. Temple College of Public Health and Social Work. My department is Environmental and Occupational Health. And as you can see, this is my department, or my college is one of the most beautiful building on the campus. So if you haven't gone there, please come and visit us. We would be happy to host you. And besides that, our college or our department offers the Master's in Public Health, which is a professional degree, as well as we also offer PhD and certificate programs. So anyone who is interested in pursuing a Master's in Public Health degree can contact me or our department, and if I will have my email here from Eric, you can get it and you can contact me. Especially like I am from the environmental and occupational health, so I have a bias for the environmental and occupational health, and this is what I feel about the environmental and occupational health. The reason is that this is where you learn how environment can cause different kind of diseases, the chronic disease or even infectious diseases, whether it's the Flint water problem or it's the methane gas leaking in California. So all those come under the purview of the environmental and occupational health. So wherever you are, not even a single day goes by when you may not find an issue which is related to the environmental and public health, whether it's the radio or TV or wherever. So this is a very, very active area of learning and the research and going forward with it as we move into the 21st century. So having said that, as you all have the article in front of you, which caught my attention about how long actually we can live in today's world, right? And first of all, I want to tell you is that I'm not an expert on aging. And this session is a moderator, like I'm a moderator. So I'm going to be asking you the questions. What do you think about it? And if you have read the article, sure, I will provide some of the information. So that's the kind of thing which we will be doing and give you some background information. So we have made a lot of strides to the health and social changes and all that, which has been going on for many, I would say, a century or the millenniums, and where we are at the moment with the global population and the rise and epidemiological transition, demographic transition, all those terms which is there, then also the earth carrying capacity. And with all these things, and you see the current world at the moment, let me ask you, how long you want to live? Anyone can volunteer? Yes, go ahead.
At least at 50 years.
50 years.
I know that's not the expectation now. Now it's like 78 or something like that, at least in America. But I mean, that's just how I want to see it. I want to be fulfilled at 50.
Okay. Anyone else? You?
I don't know. I want to stay here as long as I can.
Okay, that's a good answer. What about you, sir?
120, that's about as high
Okay.
as you get.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. What about anybody else? How long you want to live?
I guess maybe 80, 90 years.
Maybe 90 years. Yes.
When my health, especially my mental health, is bad, I want to be out of here.
Yeah, and in fact, that's the topic of today's talk, that how long can you live, and at what stage you want to be when you want to quit, right? So we have lots of strides, lots of things which has gone into, there's lots of, lots of developments in terms of the medicine and those things which has taken place, and the longevity has certainly increased all around the world. At the moment, our global population is 7.2 billion at the moment. And the forecast is that, not forecast, the current situation is that one of the fastest growing age group segment is 60 plus. At the moment, you also have under 5 survival, or the population of the under 5 children is almost at the rate going almost a parallel with the people who are at the age of aging, like 60 plus, or even soon 80 plus will not be unheard of. Did you all watch yesterday's video, 106-year-old women who went to the White House? So you may be hearing much more now that like centennial population and more than 70, 80 years of age is not unheard of. It's very, very common these days. So what has happened? How or where we are at the moment today, and where it has led to? At the moment, we have in the beginning in 1925 or so, global average of longevity was 59. But that's when we started to realize, and that's when you must have heard, the plague or all kind of contagious and infectious diseases which was there, and that's why you also had the very, very low longevity. But as we came to know about the clean water and better sewage disposal and all that, the knowledge which got our attention, with that our longevity expanded to 59. Sooner or later, then also we have vaccine development for smallpox, diphtheria, polio, and other deadly diseases. In 1955 or so, that's in the early 50s, the longevity increased to 70. And you can see the progression of how we are going and increasing the longevity. But at the same time, the biological system, what happens is that after a certain time, each stage of the life, the certain organ needs extra attention. And I have a slide I will show you in a while, in a few minutes, that how at certain age, whether it's eye which needs more attention, whether it's your lungs need more attention, whether your heart needs more attention. So those kind of things at certain ages, like at the age of 40, you start to pay more attention to your eye, or let's say at the age of 35, you start to pay attention to the muscle. But it all also comes down that what kind of a lifestyle you are leading, what kind of a lifestyle you will have. So no matter where we go, so what kind of a lifestyle you would lead to so that you have a longer life, but at the same time, how you can be healthy. So what do you know about that? How you can live longer? What you can do so that you can live longer? You? What you should do to live longer? I'm sorry?
I guess be fit and healthy.
Okay. Anything else? Yes?
My grandma, she actually lived to be about 89 years old. And even though, mobility decreases as time goes on, but in terms, she was able to live that long, I feel, because of her diet. She ate little to no meat, if that, and she would eat roots and stuff, not roots out the ground, but yucca, or they call it manioc in Clay. Or, she basically lives like almost like a vegetarian lifestyle a little bit. I think your health, like what you feed yourself, ultimately dictates how long your vessel lasts. That's how I feel.
Yes.
It was along the lines of her. I feel like the natural route is what gets you further in the long run. Even you don't even need certain things like drugs if you're taking care of yourself in your young age naturally. Because like my dad, he's a nutritionist, and he's about to be 60, and he looks early 40s. So it really just depends on like what you put in your body and like how naturally you want to do it. Because like at the end of the day, your body's a natural thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would change the social structure and the way power is distributed in society. Because all of that access to health, access to food, access to clean water, it's structured by the social structure and the way violence is directed into it. So.
Anybody else want to add something to it? Actually, you have also brought a very important factor, and that is a big factor, because what is happening is that if we live long, yes, sir.
Yeah, and just to add to the conversation, I believe it's a balance. It's a balance of the physical, mental, and social environments that we take. So, like school, we have to become the role of a student. We have to be healthy by taking these tests, studying these long hours. As a child of your mother and father, you have to respect your mother and father in social events, social gatherings that will lead to a longer life and healthy life.
Anything else? Yes.
I think that beyond all the reasons they mentioned, I think the longevity runs in certain family or something. I'm not sure. Because my grandpa, he lived to be maybe 103 or something, and he had his last child in his 80s. So, he was really young. And he smoked. He decided to smoke around 70. All his life he did not do that. 70, he hit a crisis or something. Started smoking.
Well, you also brought a very, very interesting aspect of that, because still the scientific world is figuring out that how a person can live longer. There are so many factors, and I have a slide I will show you that there are so many factors, whether it's the environmental, social, biological, genetic, and all those things, how it brings to you to live longer. That reminds me of a really interesting joke, is that there's one guy who turned 100, so he had a press conference, and people came and asked him that, what do you do? Like, how come you are living 100 years? And so he says, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I lead a very healthy life. And then meanwhile, they heard a commotion behind the door, as if like someone is running around and all that. So like, oh, what is going there? So like, I know that's my father. When he gets drunk, he starts to chase the maid. so now, like when he gets drunk, and then so the point here is that, as you just said, that the genetic basis and the environmental basis, wherever you go, is there. But we are actually getting the tools to even increase the longevity. For example, as you can see here, longevity in the age of 1920s or so, it was 40, in 40s, 47, 45, as you see here, 59, in 19, when we have the vaccine development, because the child also under 5 mortality, and the expectancy of the life also increases once the child grows beyond, let's say, 5 years of age. And how do you do that? And that's why also at that time when the vaccine came in, the chances of that child to survive much longer becomes much more higher. But at the same time, also the realization the global population is increasing. But how many of you know that what is happening at the moment with the global population? Is it on the decline, or still it is going up? I'm sorry? Yeah, what is the growth rate? Is it increasing? The growth rate is still being maintained, or it has gone down?
I think it's stable.
People are having babies, people are dying.
Okay, go ahead.
It's increasing.
I'm sorry?
It's increasing fast.
Growth rate is declining.
Population.
Growth rate is declining, but the population is increasing. The reason is that we are already so many of us. So what has happened is the death rate has gone
Can
down.
you clarify exactly growth rate, what you mean by that?
Growth rate is the birth rate minus death rate, and that is determined by the 1,000 in the mid-year population. So birth rate if minus death rate, that determines the natural increase or the growth rate. So what is happening is that in the early 50s or so, our growth rate of the world was in the range of 2.3, or actually maybe even much more. But at the moment, it is actually 1.2%. So in order to have the population double, it has to be 2.2 birth rate. So 2.2 growth rate, which is not happening. So the world population growth is declining. Growth rate is declining, but at the same time, population is increasing because we are already so many of us. So by the time with this rate, if we go, the prediction is that by 2025, 30, or maybe even 2040, it will stabilize. So then we will have a number which will stabilize and it will plateau. So what is happening is that you have the growth rate has declined, the population rate is still growing, and there the share of the older population is increasing. The share of the older population is increasing. So what in turn is happening, that actually the world is growing old. So you have more population of the older age population. Okay? But again, it depends from where you are, which part of the world. There are many parts of the world where actually the population is declining. There are many parts of the world, especially resource-limited areas, where you have population is increasing. Because still there is a birth rate is higher there. So the number of population or the population is increasing in those areas, such as sub-Saharan region or South Asia and those places where the resource is limited, the population is increasing. But overall, in those areas also, overall in the world, the population of the older generation is increasing. On the horizon, as we just saw by 2015, whatever we had been doing, regenerative medicine, personalized and precision medicine, prevention and lifestyle improvements, longevity by 2050, it may be in the range of 85 or so. So you can expect if, have a vaccination, if you're living into an area, if you're trying to lead a good life or healthy life, the expectation is that you can live at least 80, 85 years of age. And then, again, you have more population, which may be even going 100 beyond. So these things will be there, and your point is well taken, and I'm going to address that also. Even those personalized medicine or precision medicine, how many of us can afford, right? Whether affordability will be there, whether accessibility will be there, which part of the world you are. So those kind of things will also have to be taken into consideration. But overall, the awareness about even simple hygiene and sanitation itself has increased the longevity time of the people. That awareness that you need to wash your hands so that you don't get infection, and communication. This is one of the biggest success of the public health, to make people aware about these things. So because the infectious diseases which had been the biggest killer in the whole world right from the very beginning. And there is another term which I would like to introduce here is that one is certainly the demographic transition, which I said that what is happening is the birth rate is going down, but death rate is also going down. So what is happening is that you have an older population more in the community or in the world. So that is called the demographic transition. Now I'm going to introduce another term, what is called epidemiological or disease transition. What is that happening is that if you see, we are moving from the time when we had the communicable diseases much more prevalent into our society. Whether it's a smallpox, plague, and all kinds of things, polio, all kinds of things which were there, diphtheria, all those things were there. So we have kind of, I wouldn't claim that we have completely conquered. Of course, you don't hear much more about the smallpox, but you do hear that that has been eradicated from the world. The polio is almost at the brink of elimination from the world. If you have the vaccination, diphtheria and measles and chickenpox, and all those things are being taken care of. So the life expectancy increased. The part of the world also became developed area. So the transition from the communicable to we have the non-communicable diseases. Because you are living longer, so what is happening is that in the biological process, the cells go through at the cellular level, at the DNA level, at the protein level. So they go through the process of the aging. It's just a natural process which happens. The goal is, and you will see that what we will have to do, or the drugs, what is coming out, that it is probably trying to interfere at that level so that you can live longer, right? We haven't gotten success yet. There are many of the things, and if you go into the, the herbal medicine or the pharmaceutical store, you see how many kind of different supplements. The dietary supplements are filled with, all the shelf is filled with antioxidants and herbal medicine and ginseng, and there's so many of them which are there. Because everybody wants to live longer. Everybody wants to look good. So, you go through this process. So that's what is happening. So this is there, this is in the horizon, and then possibly we will be living much, much longer. That also brings to his point, to the social changes. Now you think about it. You are retiring at the age of 60, or let's say 65. You will still have almost half of your life ahead of you, right? How are you going to support yourself? Because, you are going to live longer. How will you support? Will we have enough social security in all over the world where that can support you? Would you have money to support your healthcare? Because anyway, you will have some elderly or the aging processes is going to take over. How are you going to take care of it? Can anyone suggest any idea? How are you going to support yourself?
The commercials, this professor gets on talking about people preparing for retirement, preparing for themselves. So maybe that's why he's on there. A lot of people, they're trying to get ready either to sell or get people prepared for that on their own, much less whatever Social Security or whatever systems we have here and abroad. There's an emphasis during your working years or your higher earning years to be prepared to take care of yourself for a long time.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Yes.
Do you think this will prompt a return to like multi-generational households? I feel like there's no point in having 3 different toasters for like, 3 different generations when you all live in the same house. Everybody, you don't need to buy all of your own furniture and all your own stuff if you move back to your kid's house, because that's still possible, right? I mean, my mom is always going to be welcome in my home. Just saying. I'm never going to turn her away.
Any other idea?
I think you said it with the Social Security and Medicare too.
Because at the moment, out of 167 countries, I believe, altogether, this is the UN record, 167 countries at least provide some or the other form of Social Security. But you are also hearing all the time that Social Security is going to get bankrupt. And that is also because of the demographic transition. Because I will show you a graph where you'll see, especially in the developed countries, for example, South Korea, Italy, Japan, all those places, you have elderly population only there. The pyramid is just like this. So if you're taking, I'll show you that graph. So you have more elderly, so there is no other people to support that kind of a system. So, yes, go ahead.
Well, the idea that I have in mind might sound silly, but if we were to learn agriculture and how to have your own land, and if you save enough to get your own house in a cheap land, that's all you need. Because in reality, what we need is a house and food. And if you know how to grow your own food, and if you have secured a house,
Yes.
I actually agree with that. I think sustainable energy is, happening now all across not only our nations but across the world. And I think different techniques to use in that can really help support families that aren't able to support themselves. And like the gentleman over here was saying earlier about how the healthcare, not only the healthcare, but just the government themselves need to look into all these different industries to aid low-income families to help support themselves, can really help themselves support, basically, so they can help support themselves and live as long as people who are wealthier.
So the concept of what you suggested is also kind of a social engineering or the social restructuring. And that was one of the a very interesting idea which was put forward, was that maybe people, when they need to take care of the family, they should go on the sabbatical. Even if you are working, take a 10 years of sabbatical or 20 years of sabbatical, and then again come back to the workforce, so that you can still maximize the opportunity what you have. So that's one of the idea which was put forward at some places. But again, like, these are all just the thoughts which is coming at the moment, and how much this will be taken care of or what will happen. That, like, you study, you go to the college, you find some work, or like in the agriculture sector, wherever you are, and then after that, when you are starting a family, or like, you take a 10 years or 5 years, and then again come back to, so that you can still work at the age of 70. So, so those kind of things are there to support yourself, but what is there, we don't know yet. So the shift from pattern of high fertility and high mortality to low fertility and low mortality, mortality declines with better hygiene and sanitation. Population grows with a gap between births and deaths. Fertility declines, population growth slows, and older share of population increases as births and deaths equalize. So this is how the demographic transition which is taking place all around the world at the moment. So this is the graph I was talking about. You see here on the y-axis you have the age from 0 to 4 all the way to the 80 plus. On the right side you have the female population. On the left side you have the male population. And as you can see, these are different pyramids of the population in the different parts of the world. So here, this part will be like a South Asia or sub-Saharan region. This one will also be more like a low middle income countries. But this is the kind of a pyramid what you are looking at the developed world at the moment, where you have the higher population of the much more older people. But overall, still the population of the elderly is increasing in the world. As you can see here, 1950, 1955, this is the longevity, life expectancy. You can see in US from 68 to 84.1. That's the current in 2015, or the projection is from 2050 to 2055. That's the current projection. That's the kind of, you expect to live around that age. And even in the world, if you see from 1950 to 1955, where it was about 47 years, which is going to be close to about 76.6 age. So you can expect to live around that much of age. Again, this is just, we just discussed about like, how are you going to support? Are we ready for those kind of things? Like, the social changes which is taking place. And you can see the developing countries, the share of the elderly population will be much more from the developing nations compared to the developed nation by 2050. So earlier somebody had mentioned the goal is that goal should be, because I would assume that, or like you described, that this is what you want. That it's not the lifespan you are increasing, but how long you can live in a healthy life, right? So that is the goal. I would assume that everyone would probably agree. Right, Dominic? Yeah. So healthy lifespan. So that you can, and that's what this article also talks about, is that how we can push all the degeneration or the age-based degradation or those things towards that, so that we have a minimum morbidity when we are ready to die. So there are lots of drugs which are also becoming available in the market. So you can live a healthy life, prolonged healthy life. But there was a paper which published last year only, where there's no matter what you do, of course the life expectancy is increasing in the world, but at the same time, no matter what you do, how long you live, but at least 3 to 4 years of the age, you will still live into the much more of a morbid condition, or there will be some or the other form of disability will set in at some time point. And this study was an extensive study, was in 189 countries. So even though we have a life expectancy, much it's increasing, but at the same time, you cannot escape that 2 to 3 years of disability adjusted life. So the push into this kind of a research or push into this kind of a social structuring is to how to cram or how to push all the morbidity towards the end or wherever, so that you can have a much more longer healthy life. So this was a Time magazine thing. Maybe you must have seen that if this baby is born today with all the tools available to him or her, so it will be that's the kind of age the baby can live. What we have at the moment, the tools and the biology is probably already there. We have the drugs and those kind of things by which you can push yourself to live into it. But at what state of your mind, at what state of your body you will be after, let's say, 60, 70, 80 years, that's what you have to determine. That's what you have to think about. So how can we do it? And as you can see, basics of aging that underlie all age-related chronic diseases. Now here is also another concept I would like to throw it at you, is that when we talk about that, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or cancer, and all those kind of things. So essentially, do you think it's disease?
From the environment and the attacks, but those cancer and diabetes is the generation of your body. It was because you did it for 10 years. Then when cancer appeared, it's not that it appeared. No, it was because for 10 years prior to that you were degenerating your body. So it's a state of your body. You can reverse it.
Any comment? Do you agree to that?
I don't completely agree to that because, especially with cancer, only because cancer does have some hereditary forms. And, I know there are some, depending, if it can be caused by environmental factors or life, I guess, but cancer itself is very hereditary as well. So for that one, I'm just kind of and I'm sure other diseases as well. It's just a little. I kind of agree with them, but not completely.
Okay. Any other comment? What do you think? These diseases, for example, even for that matter, you can include Alzheimer's, Parkinson, and all that. So are they individual diseases?
Well, when it comes to the biomedical approach to all of these diseases, they really do define it as just being the body as a machine. They find that there's a disease or there's something that's imbalanced in the body, and then they have a solution in either the form of a pill or treatment or some type of work that you can actually physically heal your body. But when it comes to the different types of approaches to health, there's Ayurvedic medicine, there is Chinese medicine. They have different ways and perspectives to approach all of these different diseases. They have different terms to describe a stomach ache. They have different terms to describe, the headaches. These all stem from different languages, but they stem from different perspectives of the disease itself.
Any other comment? So because you are partially right what you said, and this is the new concept, and not new concept, in fact, traditional medicine has these kind of a concept already in place, that it's the process, as you can see here, that over the period of time, the body certainly ages. So at the cellular level, at the molecular level. So if you have cancer, if you have diabetes, if you have cardiovascular disease, you cannot treat them in isolation, which had been so far, we had been treating the cancer, we had been treating cardiovascular disease, we had been treating diabetes. So rather, you start earlier by changing your lifestyle or For example, I mean, these people are claiming that you have a drug, or maybe not one drug or two drug, whatever, but that's the pharmaceutical industry will always try to push. But the idea here is that the basic fundamental changes what is occurring at the cellular level, at the molecular level, you try to attack that. But so chronic low-grade inflammation unrelated to infection, cellular degradation, damage to major molecules like DNA, protein. You have seen so many antioxidants in the market, right? So it says it's a process to push it back or delay. The aging you cannot prevent at the moment, but you can delay the process so that you can have much more healthier life down the road. And it starts not from like when you become adult. It starts from the time the child is in the womb of a mother. It starts from there. So all the epigenetic changes which is taking place, the exposures the mother is having, exposure the child is having, exposure what you are having when you are outside, when you are whether you are getting UV exposed or whether lead in the water, right? So all those exposures compounds, and that's where the challenge we have at the moment is that how we can capture these complex exposure what we're having from morning till evening for many, many chemicals or stress or those kind of things, which accumulates over the period of time. And that is what is triggering these kind of abnormalities, or either it accelerates these kind of a degeneration, but by changing your lifestyle, by changing your exposure routes, possibly you can delay these exposure. You can minimize those exposure. You can mitigate the risk what is happening at the very cellular level or at the molecular level. And this is where the pharmaceutical industry is like here in this article also they have mentioned that maybe one or two drug, maybe combination of drugs you can do that so that you can minimize the effect of any kind of exposure. So failure of stem cells and other progenitor cells are to function, because you also have to realize that your body is a very, very robust system. Very, very, it can heal by itself quite a bit until and unless you really abuse it. You have to really abuse it to fall sick. It has a remarkable capacity to heal by itself. But then I wouldn't recommend that if you have something and don't go to the doctor or like don't see a doctor. So I wouldn't recommend that. But at the same time, I would also not recommend that just go and gobble up all the things what is there on the shelf at the moment, because we're not ready for that either. And that's, again, it's a clever, or I would say the move, because the regulatory agencies at the moment are not approving many of these drugs, which can be potentially very, very good. Let's say resveratrol or metformin, and those kind of drugs which are already available, but there are some others as well. So what they have done is that they have taken it and then put it into the combination. It's just not one. They will have a combination of all this things together, put it in the shelf as a dietary supplement and those kind of things. So you have to understand that thing, but at the same time, I would say how you can delay the effect of this complex exposure, that will be helpful. So what I would like you to take it from here is that cancer is just not one disease. Cardiovascular disease is not one disease. Diabetes is not one disease. It's the process of, somewhere I also read that somebody said that the human life is only for 40 years. After that, it's overtime. So, but then we have the capacity, like in all these things, or if we change the lifestyle, if we can delay this thing, so one can live, and as you can see, the projection is that you can live all the way up to 142 years. So as I had just mentioned, you can see the exposure starts right from the mother's womb all the way to the elderly population stages of life. And if you are a child, you are getting exposed to certain things which is much more potent at the children's age. If you are a woman at the adolescent age, you are exposed to something which is much more potent. If you are elderly, you are exposed to something that is much more potent. So different stages of the life, how you are getting, and that can even accelerate your aging process. How you are getting exposed, and whether it's the water, whether the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, the place you work, all those kind of things combined together can accelerate or decrease or delay your aging process. And see here, this is a quite interesting thing, that how you can have an effect on your lifestyle in order to mitigate or minimize the effect. out of all these, like geophysical, UV light, pollution, medicines and medicinal products, non-environmental, including heredity, occupation, reproductive and sexual behavior, you see the major share is from the poor diet. Yes, poor diet also leads to obesity, it leads to malnutrition, it leads to iron deficiency and all those kind of things. So it's 35% is from your poor diet. How you are eating, where you are eating, so those kind of things. Then of course the 30% is tobacco. So you have to realize this and then try to modify your lifestyle so that it helps to delay. Again, there is nothing concrete at the moment, but all the indication shows that this is how you can increase your healthy longevity. This is another, I have tried to put together that how you can understand what is happening at the age of how you are aging. You can see in the center, you have these molecular biomarkers, and those are when I say inflammation, disrupted signal transduction, endocrine disruption, angiogenesis, autoimmunity, oxidative stress, evasion of cell death, avoiding immune destruction, energy metabolism, DNA repair. Those are the basic or fundamental functions of the cells at the molecular level. But those are all being affected. If you look at on the left side, the environmental exposure, you have toxic chemicals, reproductive factors, diet, nutrition, psychological, psychosocial factors, drugs and alcohol, socioeconomic factors, built environment, smoking. All those things affect any of these cellular and the molecular processes of the cells, which is leading to the aging process. But where it is being manifested, the first it is being manifested at the molecular level, if you see on the right side, at the DNA level, at the genes level, at the RNA, protein, and metabolites level. What you are eating, how it is getting metabolized, how you, like what you have eaten at the different age cycle, the nutrition, how it is being absorbed in your body. So at the age of 60, essentially, your intestine is not able to capture all the nutrients what you need. So then at that time, you also have to balance your diet in such a way that you get proper nutrition. Similarly, at the age of early ages of the children, where the immune system is not yet completely developed, so they may become much more vulnerable to any kind of infection. So environment plays a very, very clear-cut and very, very important role in determining that at the cellular processes, at the DNA, RNA, protein, all those levels, how it can affect those cellular processes, and if there is any disruption in those cellular mechanisms, the molecular mechanisms, that's when it will lead to phenotype of complex chronic diseases and all that, and the accelerated aging process. You can see in the bottom what I am saying, mental health, Parkinson's disease, and all that. So, but we are at this age of how we can capture all this information. That's mind-boggling. Imagine from the morning when you get up and until the time when you go to bed, you are getting exposed to no less than 3,000 to 5,000 chemicals. Just I'm talking about chemicals. Forget about any other stress and all that. The moment you apply your shaving cream, the moment you apply the cosmetics, the food you eat, and all this kind of thing. So the exposure, what you're getting is a complex exposure. And that is being manifested at the level of the cellular level and the molecular level. So the scientists and the people who are trying to tackle this problem are trying to understand how to integrate this environmental exposure effects data from molecular epidemiological approaches with biostatistical, bioinformatic, and biofunctional, all this evidence to say, and then again, each one of us is different. So the manifestation will also be different. And as we just talked earlier, that even someone can smoke and still be healthy. So how do you deal with those things? But there are some basic rules. That's what you have to understand in going forward. So how do we, after all these things, if I ask you, how would you define the aging process? So here it says the deteriorative changes with time during post-maturational life that underlie an increasing vulnerability to challenges, thereby decreasing the ability of the organism to survive. That was the one definition. Then we have the second definition. Senescence, aging, is mainly used to describe age-related changes in an organism that adversely affect its vitality and functions, but most importantly, increase their mortality rate as a function of time. Senility represents the end stage of senescence when mortality is approaching 100%. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, country, but most of the time in science says that, like, science approves evolution, and evolution says that after the death of many organisms, life came. But then a question that just make you think about, okay, if evolution was able to get through life, why is it that we still age? So it's just
This is a disease that we haven't cured.
I'm sorry?
I would say that it's a disease that we haven't cured, because when we stop the molecular destruction, that's it. We don't age anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there are examples in the nature. There are examples in the nature. You have the mole rats, which can just survive.
Jellyfish also that can.
This other, like, it's like a micro worm that.
And people are working on those things.
I know.
People are working. That's where we're trying to derive the clues. That's what we can do so that we can disrupt this process. How we can set back or reset our time. Would you like to go back into your pram or in the in the crib? So this is one of the definition which I thought was much more appropriate. This is again evolving definition of aging. Aging is the random changes in the structure and functions of molecules. Why I said that, random changes. The exposure, what you are getting, same the other person is also getting, but the changes could be different. So the aging is the random changes in the structure and function of molecules, cells and organisms that is caused by the passage of time and by one's interaction with the environment. The aging increases the probability of death. So as you go, and we have, like the cell have the programmed cell death. The process is called apoptosis. And when you have the cancer, this is what happens, that mechanism, the normal or the natural mechanism of the cell is interrupted. And that's why there is an uncontrolled cell division which takes place. There is no regulation of those cells to die. And then each of these cancer cells, it seems like they have their own minds. They escape, they fight or flight. And there is a whole mechanism people are working on this thing.
In which we all die. I mean, death is a process of life itself. So, excluding that from the definition of aging just doesn't make sense. Like the first two just describes it as a function of time. But then with this definition, it clearly understands that death is inevitable when it comes to, and they're talking about the biological system that is the body and the life that we perceive.
Correct. And in the same time, it also says that what kind of environment you are dealing with, it can accelerate or decelerate. Right? Does anyone have a comment?
We didn't touch upon it. How big is the impact of stress, especially in the Western world, on longevity? Because all of the contagious diseases we've done away with, basically. But how is it that, especially on this part of the world, we're still dealing with heart diseases and things like that? What is the impact on longevity?
Stress has a huge It has a huge impact. And then this is where it comes to that we have moved away from the infectious disease to the chronic diseases. And the next stage of the disease is the mental disorders. And it's not mental disorder, I'm talking about the Alzheimer, or I'm talking about Parkinson, or I'm talking about dementia. I'm also talking about just the depression. Just that is the stress related so much, the oxidative stress and all that. And not only that, and that has a very, very negative effect on the cellular function. It is well established. And that is where, sometimes you get antidepressants, right? People get into the alcohol and drugs and all those kind. But the stress has, and this is where it is moving. It's epidemiological transition, and we will hear more of the mental disorders compared to even because we will be probably even able to manage these chronic diseases. We are probably ready. Think about it. Cancer, earlier it used to be death sentence. But at least now you can live 5-10 years now by managing it properly. So that is the next frontier of whatever you can, all the scientific field, that how to deal with the mental disorders. And that is why, if you recall, couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, even here, this current administration has put forward the brain mapping project. In early 1990s or the late 1990s, we had the genome mapping. We are working on the brain mapping. The how we think, how we do, how our behavior changes, what we do. So we are moving into that direction. And then for your, just an information, stress is certainly a big cause in aging. The more stressed you are, you age much more faster. Your cells are much more stressed. And when you get stressed, the first thing which happens is that your cell goes into the hypoxia condition, which is the less oxygen. So and then when they go into the stress condition, and that's where all kinds of different kind of molecules which starts to come out, and that causes a problem. Yeah, exactly. You will be immunocompromised. So stress does have a very big impact. I mean, if you imagine, if you're a constant exposure of the stress, that is why we start to get the gray hair much more faster, or any kind of you start to feel sick. If you are just a thought, or just imagine you are working in a very stressful condition. Your boss is not is an obnoxious boss, or even your domestic partner is a stressful person. So, and you are living into a very constant stressful condition. That is not good for your cells and molecules. I think we need to move quickly. So these are some of the medicines. What has been put forward is an anti-aging, rapamycin, metformin, resveratrol, anti-telomerase, and some of them have been mentioned into this article as well. But maybe just not one medicine will be good enough to take care of all of it. There's still a lot more research, a lot more thoughts which needs to be going in. A lot of scientific research is required, but these things are already on the horizon, and there are many more which are in the pipeline. So there may have been some combination treatment that might be required in order to address and disrupt those processes. And these things are already overclaims which are being onto the websites. The moment you open, you have so many of them which is being claimed. A reversal of gray hair discovered using a stem cell, seaweed-based gel yields, stem cells. Everything is there, already out there. But there is no guarantee. Those are just the commercial things which are all available into the webosphere, you can call it. So, and to understand the other point, what we are telling, we are trying to use the information what the other animals have. Some animals die later, some have much more longer life. If they are living longer, how healthy they are. So because you cannot conduct all the research on the human being, so you have to use these biological models, whether it's a fly, whether it's a fish or a monkey or a rat. But again, there's a very strict regulations in how you can conduct the research and all that to test the drug, or even to the stress and those kind of a research what you are doing. So, but again, as I mentioned earlier, there is a limitation that how you can establish the direct health effects, complex exposure, including combinations of genetic makeup, diet, lifestyle, or smoking, etc. We discussed about that as well. And that's a challenge which we all are facing at the moment. This is, I mentioned earlier, that all the organs need some special care at different age. You have 18, when you turn 18, after at that time, your skin starts to kind of so you have to take care of that. 35 bone, 30 at the age of 30 lungs, at the age of 40 you have muscles, 60 you'll start to problem in your hearing, 40 you start to need the power glass to read, 70 you start to keep your mind occupied so that your cognitive abilities are still maintained. So, and it doesn't happen overnight. So you know that this might happen. So you start from the very early so that you can delay these processes as much as possible. So what are the biggest concerns when you age? I have just outlined some, and I see that the timing is running out, so I'll just go ahead and read that. You are concerned about your cognitive abilities, right? That whether I will be able to function properly. Cognitive Alzheimer, Parkinson's, neurodegenerative disorders, dementia, osteoarthritis. Again, we discussed this is more of a process which goes through. But the point here is how you can delay this process. But that's what all of us are concerned, that when we age, whether we can maintain our cognitive abilities or not, or how we can how we can get into certain activities which can allow us to delay this process. Then we have less energy to do your own chores. And that's where you start to need the healthcare services or family support. So how you can maintain your bone health or how you can maintain your muscle strength so that you can still get up from your bed, and the osteoarthritis and all that. You all know that people have so many, after 50 or so, many people have the knee problem. They can't even get up. So how you can maintain your lifestyle from the very beginning so that you can delay these processes. So less energy to do your chores. Metabolism, limited absorbance of nutrients. So how you can, do you need to take a supplement from the very beginning, or you have to do something, or you eat something which gives you the nutrients right away. I'm sure that many of you have elderly in your home. They also need, just like babies, they need the burst of energy at a very frequent intervals because they cannot absorb everything at the same time. If you eat more, then they have a problem too. Then we have chronic diseases, cancers, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases, and that also needs to be understood from the very beginning. Rising healthcare costs, affordability and accessibility. We started right in the beginning, the social structure. What kind of a social structure we need to have to, if that happens, what we need to do. So in this article, as Dr. Barzilai said, our goal is to establish the principle of using a drug or two in combination to extend health span. I am not trying to promote the using one or two drug. I'm trying to say about extend the health span. That is more important. How you do it, whether you do it by drug or by your changing your lifestyle, that's more important. The best we can expect from metformin in that they have just 2 or 3 additional years of healthy aging. But the next generation of drugs will be much more potent. So don't go with the drug thing, but rather how you can age well and have a healthy style. And again, comes down to this. Are we ready if we are going to be living longer? Are we ready to accommodate those people? We are already having these issues in different parts of the world. Question? Comments? Yes?
Just a quick thing. When it comes to the integration of technology now, we carry a cell phone that can basically record anything about our human bodies and our self-presence in any situation. Like, we're being able to share our world, our environments to a certain extent to where we can share across dimensions, across the world. How do you think a simple cell phone or a computer can be integrated in health to where we can start at least being more fulfilled? Because we can schedule a whole day, we can schedule a whole year in a plan that's set into like bits. Like, how do you think that will be?
You are already doing it. Seriously, I mean, you are already doing it. You are friends with the people who are running, who are like doing all kinds of things, and how often they run, how much do they run, how healthy they are. So this is already there. We have all these really wearable technologies which can transmit all these data from your heart rate to blood sugar and all those kind of, which is being transmitted already. And in fact, that is what again can even lead to even longer life. Whether it will be healthy life, we don't know yet, because that way you can have much more. I mentioned about the personalized precision medicine or precision care, if I say that. So because each one of us is different, and then how it is being transmitted and where you are getting the help, because this is a great technology in terms of digital, because it's not that you are being marked as a population, as an ethnic group. You are transmitting your individual requirement. Whether average is working for you or not, because maybe you have a high cholesterol level, but still you are healthy. You are not into the conforming into the average level. You are still healthy even if you have the higher cholesterol level. Maybe your genetic makeup is like that. And that information you can transmit and share and all that. But the problem at the moment, and as I had mentioned, that it's very, very hard, and that's where people are trying to work, that how we can capture all this information to deliver something what you need so that you can be healthy and lead a very healthy life. And I would say retail stores are much more ahead in this system, that if you go to the Amazon, you just type something, the 10 things come. That means, oh, you need this, you need this, you need this. But healthcare is still there. It hasn't reached to that level. Maybe it is more complex. That's where we are. Yes, sir.
For rejuvenation and eternal youth, I see that you're using a lot of stem cells,
Yep.
which is an ethical problem when it comes to medicine in humans, because if you're doing stem cell, you gotta use embryos from humans. So wouldn't that affect the fact of, wouldn't that be affecting like medicine and rejuvenation, the fact that humans are gonna be benefiting from maybe the life? Like people are gonna fight this, like, oh, you're taking away the life of a newborn. Get this stem cell. Yeah.
There are, of course, the bioethics is a whole new area. Okay. However, a stem cell doesn't originate only from the embryos. So you have, in fact, we are working on the stem cells here in the lab, and those are from the cancerous stem cells. So what happens is that even if you're treating the cancer, some of them just escape. And then just one cell can again regenerate over there, and then they can do that. And that's the kind of work and that is called also the cancerous stem cells. They can, wherever, and you must have heard the metastasis or what is called the malignancy. So breast cancer cells, just the one cell, goes into the brain and it conforms to the brain cells because the environment is such there, and then it starts to proliferate as the brain cancer. So people are trying to understand that it doesn't have to be necessarily embryonic cells. It can come from all different kind of cell types, skin cells, or even like, you're from a stomach or wherever. So this is a very, very active area of research. We are doing it, some of these here, right here. Yeah, and then like, we are growing let's say, for example, if you want to change your heart, so that is also being grown into some animals or in vitro condition. So, but then again, whether you want to be proactive in treating as such from the very beginning of those processes, or you want to have a heart transplant, you can still do it. Those options are there. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention. Appreciate that.